parking spot almost cost me my dream job. I'd been working at Cascadia Tech for 3 months when I parked in what looked like any other visitor spot on level 2 of the company garage and came back 8 hours later to find a note under my wiper blade that said, "This is my spot, move or get towed." No signature, no explanation, just block letters written in Sharpie on printer paper, folded once and shoved under the rubber. I stood there holding it, looking around the garage like someone was going to pop out and explain the joke. The spot wasn't marked. No sign, no painted number, no nameplate. Just concrete and yellow lines like every other space on the level. I checked the employee handbook on my phone that night and confirmed what I already knew. Cascadia didn't do assigned parking. First come, first served. I crumpled the note and tossed it in my bag. Somebody's weird power trip. I'd park wherever I wanted. The next morning, I got there at 7:15 and took the same spot. When I came back at 5:30, there was a second note. This one had more words. Most of them I can't repeat, but the message was clear. I was disrespectful, I was ignorant, and if I parked there again, my car would be towed at my expense. Clipped to the note with a binder clip was a Polaroid photo of my license plate taken from directly behind my car. Someone had been standing right there, watching. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't a prank. I asked my cube neighbor, Priya, about it the next morning. She winced the second I described the spot. "Oh no," she said, "that's Garrett's spot." "Garrett who?" "Garrett Brennan, senior engineer. He's been here like 15 years. He parks in that spot every single day." "It's not assigned," I said. "I know, but he thinks it is. Everyone just knows not to park there. Why doesn't he just get an assigned spot if it matters that much?" Priya shrugged. "I don't think the company does that for anyone below director level, but Garrett acts like he owns it. People have tried to park there before and he loses his mind." I stared at her. "And everyone just goes along with it? It's easier than fighting with him." I went to my manager Colleen later that day and showed her the notes. She read them, handed them back, and laughed. "Yeah, that sounds like Garrett," she said. "Just park somewhere else. It's not worth the fight." "It's a public spot," I said. "He doesn't own it." "I know, but he's been here forever and he's very particular about his routines. You're new. It's easier to just let it go." "He threatened to tow my car. He took a photo of my license plate." Colleen sighed. "Look, I get it. But Garrett's one of those guys who's been here since the company was 10 people in a basement. He's got a lot of sway. If you push this, it's going to make your life harder, not his." I left her office angrier than I'd been when I walked in. I'd spent 3 years in grad school and 2 years at a startup that imploded, and I'd finally landed a decent role at a stable company. I wasn't going to let some middle-aged engineer bully me out of a parking spot because he decided it belonged to him. The next morning, I parked in the same spot at 7:10. I sat in my car for a minute after I turned off the engine, half expecting Garrett to appear and start yelling. Nothing happened. I grabbed my bag and walked to the elevator. All day, I kept checking the garage camera feed on my phone, which employees could access for security reasons. My car sat there untouched. No notes, no trucks. By 4 o'clock, I'd almost convinced myself the whole thing was over. I stayed late to finish a code review and didn't leave the building until 6:30. The garage was nearly empty by then. I walked across level 2 toward my car, keys in hand, and saw something white tucked under the wiper blade again. I stopped walking. My hands went cold. I pulled the note out from under the blade and unfolded it. "You think this is a game? Move your car or I'll move it for you." Below that, in smaller letters, "You've been warned 3 times. Don't say I didn't try." I looked around the garage. Empty. Whoever Garrett was, he'd already left. I folded the note, shoved it in my pocket, and drove home with my hands shaking on the wheel. The next morning I got there at 6:50, early enough that the garage was still half empty. I parked in the same spot, locked my car, and walked to the elevator without looking back. When I came down at lunch to grab something from my trunk, Garrett's truck was parked in the spot directly next to mine. A massive black Ford F-250 with oversized tires and a toolbox bolted to the bed. He'd parked so close to my driver's side door that I couldn't fit my hand in the gap. I stood there staring at the 2 inches of space between our vehicles. My car was a 12-year-old Civic. His truck was pristine, detailed, the kind of vehicle someone waxed every weekend. He'd done this on purpose, positioned it perfectly so I'd have to climb in through the passenger side like a teenager sneaking out of a house. I pulled out my phone and took 3 photos. Then I walked back upstairs, ate my sandwich at my desk, and didn't go back to the garage until 5:45. The truck was gone. My car sat there alone. No new notes. I drove home and told myself it was over. The next morning, I parked in the same spot at 7:15. The truck pulled in 10 minutes later. I watched from the stairwell window as Garrett climbed out, glanced at my car, and walked toward the building without stopping. He was tall, maybe mid-50s, with a gray beard and a Cascadia Tech polo shirt tucked into jeans. He didn't look angry. He looked calm. That afternoon, I came back to find the truck parked so close again that I had to squeeze through the passenger side, crawl over the center console, and bang my knee on the gear shift trying to get into the driver's seat. I sat there breathing hard, my knee throbbing, and pulled out my phone. I called the non-emergency police line and explained what was happening. The dispatcher listened, asked if I felt threatened, and told me it sounded like a civil dispute. If my car got damaged, I could file a report. Until then, there wasn't much they could do. I hung up and drove home. The following Monday, I walked out to the garage at 8:30 to grab a file I'd left in my car and found my front passenger tire completely flat, not punctured, just deflated. The valve cap sat on the ground next to the wheel like someone had unscrewed it, let the air out, and walked away. I stood there staring at the tire, my chest tight, my mouth dry. I couldn't prove it was him, but I knew. I called roadside assistance, waited 40 minutes for them to arrive, and missed my morning stand-up. By the time I got back to my desk, Priya had already heard about it. Everyone's talking about it, she said quietly. People saw the truck this morning. Did anyone see him touch my car? She shook her head. No, but everyone knows. I went to HR that afternoon. I brought the notes, the photos of the truck boxing me in, and a written timeline of every incident. The HR rep, a woman named Elizabeth, listened with her hands folded on the desk and her face carefully neutral. This sounds very frustrating, she said when I finished. Let me talk to Garrett and see if we can schedule a mediation session. I don't want mediation, I want him to stop. I understand, but our policy is to try conflict resolution first before escalating to formal disciplinary action. He let the air out of my tire. Do you have proof of that? No, but who else would do it? Elizabeth wrote something on her notepad. I'll schedule the session for later this week. The mediation happened on Thursday at 2 in the afternoon. Elizabeth led us into a small conference room with a round table and a box of tissues on the credenza. Garrett sat across from me, arms crossed, jaw set. Elizabeth started with the usual script about respectful communication and finding common ground. Then she asked Garrett to share his perspective. He leaned forward and looked directly at me. I've been parking in that spot for 15 years, he said. Every single day. Rain, snow, doesn't matter. I get here at 7:30, and I park in that spot because that's my routine. That's how I start my day. And then you show up 3 months into this job and decide you're going to take it just because you can. No courtesy, no respect. You don't ask around, you don't check with anyone. You just take what you want because you think the rules don't apply to you. The rules say it's a public spot, I said. The rules don't say anything about common sense. This is how things work here. People respect each other. People understand that someone who's been here 15 years has earned the right to a little consistency. But you don't care about that. You just care about proving a point. Elizabeth cleared her throat. Garrett, I appreciate you sharing that. I do want to remind you that the company handbook does state that parking is unassigned and available on a first-come basis. I know what the handbook says. I'm talking about respect. I'm talking about how a workplace actually functions when people aren't trying to make everything a fight. I opened my mouth to respond and Elizabeth held up a hand. Let's focus on solutions, she said. What can we do to resolve this moving forward? Garrett shrugged. She can park somewhere else. And if I don't? He didn't answer, just stared at me with his arms still crossed. Elizabeth sighed. I'm going to recommend that both of you work on finding a compromise here. Garrett, I need you to respect that the parking is technically unassigned. And, she turned to me, I'd encourage you to consider whether this is the hill you want to die on. That was it. No consequences. No formal warning. Just a suggestion that we work it out ourselves. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened my email. Within an hour, 3 people had slacked me variations of, heard about the parking thing, that's rough. By the end of the day, I'd caught 2 engineers whispering near the coffee machine and going quiet when I walked past. The next morning I got to the break room early to refill my water bottle and heard 2 voices on the other side of the partition. I mean, she could have just moved her car, one of them said. It's not like there aren't 50 other spots. Seriously, now it's this whole thing and everyone's walking on eggshells. Garrett's annoying, but he's been here forever. She's been here like 5 minutes. Just let the guy have his spot. I stood there with my hand on the water cooler, the bottle half full, and didn't move until they left. I kept parking in the same spot, every morning at 7 or earlier, every night leaving after 5. Garrett's truck still appeared next to mine most days, still parked close enough that I had to climb through the passenger side, but I stopped reacting. I documented it with photos, kept a log on my phone, and told myself I was building a case. What I didn't see coming was how he'd weaponize the story. 2 weeks after the mediation, I was working on a bug fix with another engineer named Johnny when he mentioned he'd heard I was going through some stuff. I looked up from my screen. What stuff? Just the parking thing. Garrett mentioned it in stand-up yesterday. Said you guys had a disagreement and it got kind of heated. He brought it up in stand-up? Johnny shifted in his chair. Yeah, he was talking about team dynamics and how important it is to handle conflict professionally. He didn't say your name, but everyone knew who he meant. I stared at my monitor and didn't respond. Johnny went back to typing. That afternoon, I ran into Garrett in the hallway near the bathrooms. He was walking toward me with a coffee in one hand and his phone in the other. We made eye contact. He nodded once, polite, like we were strangers passing on a sidewalk. I kept walking and felt my jaw clench so hard my teeth hurt. The next week, I submitted my application for a project lead role on a new client integration. It was a mid-level position, something I was qualified for, and I'd been working on similar projects since I started. My manager had even suggested I apply when the posting went up. I made it through the first round of interviews. The second round was with the hiring manager, a director named Paul, and 2 senior engineers from the integration team. It went fine. I answered their technical questions, walked them through my previous work, and left feeling cautiously optimistic. 3 days later, Colleen called me into her office and shut the door. They went with someone else, she said. I'm sorry. I sat down slowly. Who? Raj. He's been here 2 years and he's worked on 3 integration projects. I worked on 4 at my last company. I know, I pushed for you. But Paul felt like Raj was a safer choice given his familiarity with our systems. I nodded and stood up to leave. For what it's worth, Colleen said, I think you would have been great. I walked back to my desk and opened Slack to message Priya, then stopped. I didn't want to sound bitter. I closed the app and went back to work. 2 days later, Priya came to my desk with her laptop and sat down in the empty chair next to me. I need to tell you something, she said quietly, but you can't say I told you. I minimized my code editor. Okay. I was in a meeting with Paul yesterday. After it ended, I was packing up my stuff and he was talking to someone in the hallway. I heard him say your name. My stomach dropped. What did he say? He said he was going to offer you the lead role, but Garrett told him you were difficult to work with. He said you couldn't handle feedback and you didn't respect team dynamics. Paul asked him for details and Garrett told him about the parking thing. He said you refused to compromise and turned a small issue into a huge conflict. and that if you acted like that over a parking spot, you'd be impossible to manage on a project. I sat there staring at my keyboard. My hands were cold. I'm so sorry, Priya said. I thought you should know. Did Paul believe him? I don't know, but Garrett's been here forever and Paul trusts him. I think it was enough to make him hesitate. She left after that. I sat at my desk for another hour pretending to work and then went home early, claiming I felt sick. That night, I drafted an email to Elizabeth in HR explaining what Priya had told me. I wrote 3 versions. In the first one, I was calm and factual. In the second one, I was angrier, more direct. In the third one, I just asked her to do something, anything, to make it stop. I sent the first version. Elizabeth replied the next morning and asked me to come by her office at 2. When I got there, she was sitting behind her desk with a printed copy of my email in front of her. I understand you're frustrated, she said, but I need to be clear about what HR can and can't do here. If Garrett made these comments to Paul in a private conversation, that's not something we can discipline him for unless it rises to the level of defamation or harassment. He cost me a promotion. You don't know that for certain. Paul made a hiring decision based on multiple factors. Priya heard him say Garrett told him I was difficult. Did Priya hear the entire conversation? She heard enough. Elizabeth folded her hands on the desk. I can't take action based on secondhand information about a private conversation. If you want to file a formal complaint, you'll need documentation. Emails, texts, recorded statements, something concrete. He's been doing this for weeks. He's telling people I'm hard to work with because I wouldn't give up a parking spot. That's his opinion. People are allowed to have opinions. I felt my throat tighten. So he can just ruin my reputation and there's nothing I can do about it? I'm not saying that. I'm saying we need evidence of a pattern of behavior that violates company policy. Right now, what you're describing sounds like a workplace conflict that got personal. That's not the same as harassment. I left her office and went straight to the bathroom. I locked myself in a stall and stood there with my hands pressed against the metal door, breathing slowly until my chest stopped feeling tight. When I came back to my desk, there was a meeting invite in my inbox for a department all hands the next afternoon. The subject line said, Q3 wins and recognition. The meeting started at 3. I sat in the back row of the conference room with my laptop open, half listening while our VP talked through project milestones and revenue targets. Then he moved on to recognition. I want to take a minute to highlight some of the people who made this quarter possible, he said. First up, Garrett Brennan. Garrett stood up from his seat in the 3rd row. People clapped. Garrett's been with us for 15 years, the VP continued, and his work on the Dalton Industries integration was absolutely critical. He put in long hours, mentored 2 junior engineers, and delivered everything on time and under budget. Garrett, we're lucky to have you. More applause. Garrett nodded, gave a small wave, and sat back down. He looked pleased, humble, like someone who'd earned every bit of praise. I sat there with my hands in my lap, staring at the back of his head, and felt completely invisible. The VP moved on to the next name. I stopped listening. When the meeting ended, I packed up my laptop and walked out before anyone could try to talk to me. That night I updated my resume. I started looking for other jobs the week after the all-hands meeting. Nothing serious at first, just browsing LinkedIn, updating my portfolio, reaching out to a couple of recruiters I knew from grad school. I told myself I was keeping my options open. I wasn't ready to quit. I just needed to know there was a door I could walk through if things got worse. Things got worse. 2 weeks later, I came down to the garage at lunch and found my windshield wipers bent upward at 90-degree angles, both of them, like someone had grabbed them and yanked hard enough to snap the springs. They stuck straight up from the glass. Useless. And when I tried to push them back down, they just flopped loosely against the hood. I stood there staring at them with my keys in my hand and my lunch still sitting on my desk upstairs. The garage was empty. No cameras pointed at this section of level 2. No witnesses. Just my car with its broken wipers and Garrett's truck 3 spots down, pristine and untouched. I pulled out my phone and took photos. Then I walked back upstairs, ate my sandwich at my desk, and spent the rest of the afternoon getting estimates from auto shops. Priya saw the photos when I showed her that evening. She winced and looked away. You need to stop parking there, she said. I shouldn't have to. I know, but this is getting dangerous. I didn't answer. I drove home with the wipers sticking up like broken arms and made an appointment to get them replaced the next day. The bill was $60. I kept the receipt in my desk drawer with all the others. I parked in the same spot the next morning at 6:45. The new wipers worked perfectly. I locked my car and walked to the elevator without looking back. That afternoon, I stayed late to finish a deployment and didn't leave the building until 7. The garage was almost empty by then, just a handful of cars scattered across level 2. I walked toward my spot with my bag over my shoulder and my phone in my hand, and I saw Garrett standing next to my car. Not sitting in his truck, not walking past. Standing there, waiting. I stopped walking. He turned and looked at me. We need to talk, he said. My hands went cold. No, we don't. Yes, we do, because this is getting ridiculous. I started walking again, faster now, keys out. He didn't move. I had to walk around him to get to my driver's side door. You got new wipers, he said. That's good. I heard you had some trouble. I unlocked my car and opened the door. I'm talking to you, he said, and I'm leaving. I climbed into the driver's seat and reached for the door handle. He grabbed it first and held it open. Let go, I said. You need to hear this. I've been patient. I've tried to be reasonable, but you're making this impossible. Let go of my door. You think you're proving something by parking here every day? You think that makes you tough? All it does is make you look petty. You're embarrassing yourself. I yanked the door handle hard. He held on. Everyone's talking about you, he said. Everyone knows you're the problem. You could have just moved your car 3 months ago and none of this would have happened. But you had to make it a fight. You had to turn it into some big principled stand. And now you're surprised people don't want to work with you? I got out of the car and stood up. He was taller than me by 6 inches, but I stepped forward anyway. You broke my wipers, I said. I didn't touch your car. You let the air out of my tire. I don't know what you're talking about. You parked so close I couldn't open my door. That's not illegal. You left threatening notes on my windshield. I left you reminders that you were parking in someone else's spot. That's not a threat. That's a courtesy. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. You cost me a promotion. He laughed. You cost yourself a promotion. Paul asked me if you were a team player and I told him the truth. You're not. You're selfish. You're combative. You can't take feedback. And when someone tries to explain how things work around here, you act like they're attacking you. You've been harassing me for 3 months. I've been trying to get you to act like an adult. I felt something snap inside me. You don't own that parking spot. I've earned it. You haven't earned anything. You've just been here long enough that people are scared to tell you no. His face went red. You need to watch your mouth. Or what? You'll break my wipers again? You'll leave another note? You'll tell more people I'm difficult? You are difficult. Because I won't do what you want. Because you don't know your place. I stared at him. What did you just say? You heard me. You've been here 3 months and you think you run the place. You think the rules don't apply to you because you have a degree and some startup on your resume. But that's not how the real world works. In the real world, you respect people who were here first. You wait your turn. You don't walk in and start taking things that don't belong to you. It's a parking spot. It's my parking spot. No, it's not. He stepped closer. I could smell coffee on his breath. Move your car. No. Move your car or I'll make your life here so miserable you'll quit on your own. You're already doing that. Then it's working. I shoved him. Not hard, just enough to make him step back. He looked down at his chest where my hands had hit him, then back up at me, his face stunned. Then he shoved me back. Harder. I stumbled and caught myself against my car door. Don't touch me, he said. I shoved him again, this time with both hands. He rocked back on his heels and his eyes went wide. Hey, someone yelled. We both turned. 2 people were walking toward us from the stairwell. I recognized one of them, Johnny, the engineer I'd worked with on the bug fix. The other was someone from accounting I'd seen in the break room. They stopped about 10 feet away. Everything okay? Johnny asked. Neither of us answered. Garrett straightened his shirt and stepped back from my car. We're fine, he said. Just having a conversation. Johnny looked at me. I didn't say anything. My hands were still shaking. Garrett walked back to his truck, climbed in, and drove away. I got in my car and sat there with my hands on the wheel until Johnny and the other guy left. Then I drove home with my heart pounding so hard I thought I might throw up. The next morning I got an email from Elizabeth asking me to come to her office at 9. When I got there, she had another HR rep with her, a man named Steven who I'd never met. They sat on one side of the table. I sat on the other. We received a report that you were involved in a physical altercation in the parking garage last night, Elizabeth said. Can you tell us what happened? I told them. The whole thing. Garrett waiting by my car, grabbing my door, the things he said, me shoving him shoving me back. They listened without interrupting. When I finished, Steven made a note on his laptop. Did anyone witness this? Elizabeth asked. 2 people, Johnny and someone from accounting. Did they see who initiated physical contact? I did. I shoved him first. Elizabeth nodded slowly. Okay, we're going to need to investigate this further. In the meantime, I need you to avoid any contact with Garrett outside of necessary work interactions. Can you do that? Yes. Good. We'll follow up with you in a few days. I walked back to my desk and tried to work. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. At lunch, I saw Johnny in the break room and he looked away when I walked past. 3 days later, I got called back to Elizabeth's office. She handed me a printed letter on company letterhead. After reviewing the incident and speaking with witnesses, we've determined that you violated company policy regarding workplace conduct. Specifically, you initiated physical contact with another employee in a manner that created a hostile environment. This is a formal written warning. Any future incidents of this nature will result in termination. I read the letter twice. What about Garrett? Garrett also received a warning for unprofessional conduct. A warning, not a write-up. That's correct. He shoved me back, harder than I shoved him, and he's been harassing me for 3 months. The witnesses confirmed that you initiated the physical contact. Garrett's response was reactive. As for the harassment claim, we found no concrete evidence that his behavior rose to the level of a policy violation. I stood up. This is unbelievable. I understand you're upset, but our decision is final. Please sign the acknowledgement form and return it by end of day. I signed it in the hallway outside her office and left it on her desk without going back in. By the end of the week, everyone knew. I heard my name in whispered conversations that stopped when I walked past. People who used to say hi in the mornings now looked at their phones when I came into the break room. The 2 women I sometimes ate lunch with stopped inviting me. I was the girl who'd started a fight over a parking spot. The girl who couldn't handle conflict. The girl who'd shoved a senior engineer because he told her to move her car. Garrett still parked next to me most days. He didn't say anything, didn't look at me, just parked his truck and walked into the building like nothing had happened. On Monday morning, I parked on the street 4 blocks away and walked 10 minutes to the office. My car sat there all day in a metered spot that cost me $8. I did the same thing Tuesday and Wednesday. By Thursday, I stopped pretending it was temporary. I'd lost, he'd won, and everyone knew it. I kept parking on the street for 2 weeks. Every morning I fed the meter, every evening I walked 4 blocks back to my car, and every night I told myself it was temporary, just until things cooled down, just until people stopped talking. But they didn't stop talking. I heard my name in the hallway outside the women's restroom. I saw people glance at me in meetings and then look away too quickly. Someone had started calling me the parking spot girl, and it had spread through the engineering department like a virus. On a Tuesday afternoon, I sat at my desk staring at a spreadsheet I'd been pretending to work on for 20 minutes and opened a new browser tab. I typed Employment Lawyer Seattle into the search bar and clicked the first result. The consultation was free. I scheduled it for Thursday at noon and told Colleen I had a dentist appointment. The lawyer's office was in a building downtown with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows. Her name was Diana, and she wore a navy suit and silver glasses that made her look both younger and more serious than I'd expected. She listened while I walked her through everything. The notes, the truck, the flat tire, the broken wipers, the confrontation, the write-up, Garrett's comments to Paul about the promotion. I showed her my phone with the photos and the timeline I'd been keeping. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and folded her hands on the desk. "You have a pattern," she said. "That's good. The documentation is solid. The retaliation after you went to HR is especially concerning. And if you can prove he interfered with your career advancement, that strengthens the hostile workplace claim. So I have a case. You have the foundation of one. But I need to be honest with you about what that means. Employment litigation is expensive. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more if it goes to trial. Most of these cases settle, but settlement negotiations can take months or even years. And during that time, you'll be known as the person who sued the company. That follows you. Future employers will see it. References will be complicated. Your career in this industry could take a hit that's hard to recover from." I felt my stomach drop. "So I just let him win?" "I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to weigh the cost against the outcome. What do you want here? Do you want money? Do you want him fired? Do you want an apology? Do you want to go back to parking in that spot without harassment? I want him to face consequences. That's not the same as a legal goal. Courts don't hand out consequences. They award damages. And companies don't fire senior employees with 15 years of tenure unless they absolutely have to. Even if you win, even if you settle, there's a good chance he stays and you leave." I sat there looking at my hands. "So there's nothing I can do." "I didn't say that either. You can file a formal complaint with HR and escalate it to the executive level. You can make noise internally. You can document everything and make it clear you're prepared to take legal action if they don't address it. Sometimes that's enough to force them to act. Sometimes it's not. But it's cheaper and faster than litigation, and it keeps your options open. What if they retaliate again? Then you document that too. And if it gets bad enough, you file with the EEOC and you have a much stronger case. But that's still a long road." I left her office and walked back to my car with my head buzzing. I'd spent $200 on parking that week. I'd spent $60 on the wipers. I'd spent 3 months being scared to go to my own car. And I still didn't know how to make it stop. That night, I opened LinkedIn and started searching. Not for jobs, for people who used to work at Cascadia. I found 12 former employees who'd left in the past 5 years. I sent messages to all of them. Short, polite, no details, just, "I'm currently at Cascadia and I'm trying to understand some workplace dynamics. Would you be open to a quick call?" 3 people responded. One of them was a woman named Bethany, who'd worked in product management for 4 years before leaving to join a startup. We set up a call for Saturday morning. She answered on the second ring and got straight to it. "You're dealing with Garrett, aren't you?" she said. I almost dropped my phone. "How did you know?" "Because I dealt with him too. Different thing, same pattern. He decided the conference room on level 3 was his personal office and started leaving his stuff in there overnight so no one else could book it. I reserved it for a client meeting and moved his things to the coat rack outside. He lost his mind. Started telling people I was unprofessional. Told my manager I couldn't be trusted with client-facing work. I went to HR twice. They did nothing. Why not? Because he's been there forever and he knows every system inside and out. When the legacy code breaks, he's the only one who can fix it. The company's terrified of losing him, so they let him get away with everything." "Did anyone else have problems with him?" "Oh yeah, there was a guy in DevOps who parked in Garrett's spot by accident and Garrett keyed his car. The guy had proof. There was a camera across the street that caught it, but HR said it happened off company property so they couldn't do anything. He quit a month later. They didn't fire Garrett for keying someone's car. They didn't even write him up. They just moved him to a different parking level for a few weeks and then moved him back." "Are you serious?" "Completely. And there was a woman in finance who complained that Garrett was making comments about her weight in meetings. HR did an investigation and said they couldn't substantiate it. She left 6 months later." I sat there staring at my laptop screen. "So he's done this to multiple people. At least 3 that I know of. Probably more. And HR knows. They've always known. They just don't care because he's too valuable to lose." "How is that legal?" "It's not illegal to be a jerk. It's only illegal if it crosses certain lines. And Garrett's smart. He knows exactly where those lines are." I thanked her and hung up. Then I opened my email and started drafting a message to Elizabeth. I wrote 4 versions. The first one was angry, the second one was clinical, the third one was pleading, the fourth one was the one I sent. It was short, 3 paragraphs. I outlined the pattern of harassment, cited the 3 former employees who'd had similar experiences, and referenced my consultation with an employment lawyer. I didn't threaten to sue. I just said I was requesting a formal review of the situation and a meeting with someone above Elizabeth's level. I ended with 1 sentence. "I'm prepared to pursue all available options to resolve this, including external legal counsel if necessary." I hit send at 9:30 on Sunday night and then turned off my phone. Monday morning, I parked on the street again and walked to the office with my stomach in knots. I checked my email at my desk. Nothing from Elizabeth, nothing from anyone. At 10:15, my phone buzzed. A meeting invite for Wednesday at 2. The subject line said, "Follow-up discussion." The attendees were me, Elizabeth, Stephen from HR, and someone named Patricia Okoye, whose title was Vice President of People Operations. I accepted the invite and went back to work. Tuesday dragged. I stayed at my desk through lunch and left at 5 on the dot. Garrett's truck was still in his spot when I walked past level 2 on my way to the stairs. Wednesday morning, I got there early and sat in my car on the street rehearsing what I was going to say. I had my timeline printed out. I had the photos. I had Bethany's name written down in case they asked for sources. At 1:45, I walked into the conference room. Elizabeth and Stephen were already there. Patricia came in 2 minutes later. She was tall, maybe 50, with short gray hair and black-framed glasses. She shook my hand and sat down across from me. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I've reviewed your email and the documentation you provided to Elizabeth over the past few months. I want you to know we're taking this seriously. I nodded but didn't say anything. We're going to conduct a formal review of the situation, Patricia continued. That means interviewing witnesses, reviewing any available records, and assessing whether there's been a pattern of behavior that violates company policy. This process will take about a week. I'll personally oversee it. And once we have our findings, we'll schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss next steps. What happens to Garrett in the meantime? I asked. He'll continue working as usual. We're not going to take any action until the review is complete. So he gets to keep harassing me while you investigate whether he's been harassing me. Patricia's expression didn't change. We have no evidence of ongoing harassment. The last documented incident was 3 weeks ago. If something new happens, you report it immediately and we'll address it. But right now, we're focused on understanding the full scope of what's already occurred. And if the review finds that he violated policy, then we'll determine appropriate disciplinary action based on the severity and frequency of the violations. Will I know what that action is? We can't share details of another employee's disciplinary record, but we'll let you know that the matter has been resolved. I looked at Elizabeth. She was taking notes and wouldn't meet my eyes. I've spoken to 3 former employees who had similar experiences with Garrett, I said. HR knew about all of them and didn't do anything. How is this time going to be different? Patricia folded her hands on the table. I can't speak to decisions made before I joined the company, but I can tell you that under my leadership, we take these complaints seriously. If the review confirms a pattern of behavior that violates our policies, we will act. That's my commitment to you. She stood up. The meeting was over. We'll be in touch by the end of next week, she said. I walked back to my desk and sat down. My hands were shaking. I didn't know if I believed her. I didn't know if anything would change. But for the first time in 3 months, someone with actual authority had said the words, "We will act." I opened my laptop and got back to work. The review took 8 days, not 7. I counted every one of them. I kept parking on the street. I kept my head down at work. I watched Garrett walk past my desk twice on Thursday and once on Friday, both times without looking at me, and I told myself that meant something, that maybe he knew they were actually investigating this time. On the following Thursday at 3 in the afternoon, I got an email from Patricia asking me to come to her office at 4:30. The subject line just said, "Follow-up." I spent the next 90 minutes refreshing my inbox and pretending to debug code that didn't need debugging. At 4:25, I walked to the executive floor and sat in the waiting area outside Patricia's office until she opened the door and waved me in. Elizabeth was already there. So was Stephen. They sat on one side of the conference table, I sat on the other. Patricia sat down at the head of the table and opened a folder. "Thank you for your patience during this process," she said. "We've completed our review. We interviewed 8 current employees and 3 former employees. We reviewed all the documentation you provided, as well as previous complaints filed against Garrett over the past 6 years." I felt my chest tighten. 6 years? Yes. We found records of 3 separate complaints involving similar patterns of territorial behavior and retaliation. In 2 cases, the employees left the company before the complaints were fully resolved. In 1 case, the complaint was closed after what was documented as a mutual agreement to move forward. Why wasn't he fired? That's a fair question. The short answer is that previous leadership determined the behavior didn't meet the threshold for termination, and that informal coaching would be sufficient. Based on what we found, that was the wrong call. She turned a page in the folder. "Here's what we're doing. Garrett is receiving a final written warning. This is his last chance. Any future incidents of harassment, retaliation, or intimidation will result in immediate termination. He's also being required to complete a professional conduct training program and meet with an external coach monthly for the next 6 months. I stared at her. "That's it?" "No. We're also implementing a new parking system. Starting Monday, Level 2 will have clearly marked employee and visitor sections. Employees will park in designated rows. There will be no unofficial assigned spots and no tolerance for anyone claiming ownership of a space. And my write-up? It's being removed from your file. The incident will be documented as a mutual conflict that was resolved through mediation. It won't appear on your record, and it won't affect any future opportunities within the company." Elizabeth slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a formal letter on company letterhead. "This is a written apology from the company for how the situation was handled," she said. "We acknowledge that we failed to respond appropriately to your complaints and that our inaction allowed the situation to escalate. We're committed to doing better." I picked up the letter and read it twice. The words were correct. Professional. Carefully worded to avoid any admission of legal liability. "We're also offering you a one-time payment of $5,000 to compensate for the expenses you incurred and the distress this situation caused," Patricia said. "You're not required to accept it, but it's available if you choose to." I set the letter down. "Did you tell Garrett about this yet?" "We're meeting with him at 5. What if he doesn't accept the terms? Then he'll be given the option to resign with a severance package or face termination. Either way, the behavior stops." I nodded slowly, my throat felt tight. "I know this doesn't undo what happened," Patricia said, "but I want you to know that we heard you, and we're taking action." I left her office at 4:55 and walked back to my desk. I sat down and stared at my screen until the building started to empty out around me. At 6:15, I packed my bag and walked to the stairwell instead of the elevator. I stood at the window on the landing between Level 3 and Level 2 and looked down at the garage. Garrett's truck was still there. So was his car, parked 3 spots away in a different row. At 6:25, he came out of the building and walked toward his truck. I watched him unlock it, climb in, and sit there for almost a minute before starting the engine. Then he drove away. I walked down to Level 2 and stood in the spot where I used to park. The concrete looked the same. The yellow lines were faded in the same places. Nothing had changed except that I wasn't scared to be there anymore. I got in my car on the street and drove home. The email came on Friday morning. It went to the entire engineering department. The subject line was "a message to my colleagues." I opened it at my desk and felt my stomach drop as I read. After 15 years of dedicated service to this company, I've been informed that my commitment and loyalty are no longer valued. I've been accused of harassment for defending standards of professionalism and respect that this company used to stand for. I've been told I need coaching to fix behavior that was never a problem until someone decided to make it one. This is what happens when companies abandon the people who built them to appease complainers who can't handle feedback. I'm deeply disappointed in the leadership that allowed this to happen. I hope you all remember that loyalty is a two-way street. It was signed Garrett Brennan, Senior Engineer. I read it 3 times and then looked up. Half the department was already staring at their screens with the same expression I probably had. Priya caught my eye from across the room and mouthed, "Oh my God." My phone buzzed. A Slack message from Colleen. "Can you come to my office?" I walked over and she shut the door behind me. "Did you see the email?" she asked. "Yes. Patricia's handling it. Garrett's being suspended effective immediately. They're calling him in this afternoon to give him an ultimatum. Accept the terms or take a severance package and leave." "What do you think he'll do?" "I think he'll leave. He's not going to sit through 6 months of coaching. He's too proud." She was right. By Monday morning, the truck was gone from level 2. By Tuesday, his desk was empty. I heard through Priya that he'd taken the severance package and cleared out his office on Sunday night when no one else was there. 2 weeks later, I walked past his old cube and saw someone from DevOps moving in. The nameplate was already changed. I kept parking on the street for another month, not because I was scared, just because it felt easier. But eventually, I moved back to level 2. Not to the same spot, just somewhere in the employee section, and nothing happened. No notes, no trucks, no one waiting by my car. The new parking system worked. People parked where they were supposed to. The lines were clear. The rules were enforced. But the rest of it didn't go away. People still called me the parking spot girl. I heard it in the break room 3 weeks after Garrett left. Someone made a joke about reserved seating and another person said, "Better check with her first." And they both laughed. When I walked in, they went quiet. I submitted my application for another project lead role in March. I made it through 2 rounds of interviews. The feedback was positive. I thought I had a real shot. They gave it to someone else. When I asked Colleen why, she said the hiring manager felt the other candidate had stronger stakeholder management skills. "What does that even mean?" I asked. She looked uncomfortable. "I think they're worried about how you'll be perceived by the client team after everything that happened." "You mean after I reported harassment?" "I mean after the situation with Garrett became public. Fair or not, it affected how people see you." I went back to my desk and updated my resume that night. I stayed for 6 more months. I finished my projects. I showed up to meetings. I did my job, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was marked, that every conversation had a subtext, that every decision about my career was being filtered through the question of whether I was worth the trouble. In September, I got a message from a recruiter about a senior engineer role at a competitor. Better pay, better title, fully remote. I took the call. I did the interviews. I got the offer. I gave my 2 weeks notice on a Wednesday. Colleen took it better than I expected. "I'm sorry it didn't work out," she said. "For what it's worth, I think you were right to push back. I just wish it hadn't cost you so much." On my last day, I packed up my desk in the morning and spent the afternoon doing exit interviews and handing off documentation. At 4:30, I was carrying the last box to my car when someone called my name. I turned around. It was Bethany, the woman from product who'd left 2 years ago. She was standing near the entrance holding a visitor badge. "I heard you were leaving," she said. "I wanted to say goodbye." "You came all the way here for that?" "I came for a meeting, but yeah, I wanted to catch you. I heard what happened with Garrett. I'm glad you didn't let it go." "I'm not sure it was worth it." "It was. He's gone. That means the next person won't have to deal with him. That matters." She handed me a business card. "If you ever want to talk about what it's like to leave, call me. It gets better." I put the card in my pocket and thanked her. Then I walked to my car, put the box in the trunk, and drove away. I thought about what Bethany said on the drive home, about how Garrett was gone, and the next person wouldn't have to deal with him, about how that mattered. She was right. It did matter. He'd finally faced consequences. He'd finally been stopped. But I also thought about the 8 months I'd spent fighting, the promotion I didn't get, the coworkers who stopped talking to me, the professional reputation I'd spent years building that got reduced to a punchline about a parking spot. I'd won. The system had finally worked, sort of, after I'd forced it to. And I'd still lost more than he did.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.